Hey, welcome back to the Marianne Hickman Show. This is Talk Tips number 35. And in this talk tip, we're going to be talking about the booming industry of virtual stages and how you can get more of them. Check it out. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I love watching this new show. It's called 1883. It's about the frontier and settling the Wild West. It's a hark back to like the Oregon Trail game we always used to play as kids. And you know what? The reason that I'm thinking about that right now is because there's a new frontier in public speaking called virtual stages. Now, there's lots of summits being released. There's Zoom calls being released. And this really started when the pandemic hit us all and we were banned from going outside and we couldn't go to live events. I did a lot of live events at a big event center. And that was one of the biggest parts of our business model is live events. We did them as often as every 2 weeks at different event centers all around Utah County. We even traveled abroad to go to events in multiple different countries. I've spoken on stage in 17 different countries where we ran events or mini events or retreats or whatever the case may be. And then 2020 smacked us in the face. And we were said, gosh, we can't do live events. It's a super spreader. Remember that term? You can't do live events. But speakers in our industry, business owners, we all wanted to keep speaking. We all wanted to keep delivering messages. And even as consumers, we want to keep going to events. We want to keep networking with people. And what did that turn into? It turned into a digital stage. And if you're a speaker and you want to get into the speaking industry, you cannot deny the power of virtual and digital stages right now. It has stayed with us. It has helped us to get on more stages. It's empowered us to connect with more people. It's enabled us to connect on a worldwide scale. And I want to share with you today some talk tips on how to not only get more virtual stages, but how to help them make you some money. So let's get right into it. Okay, so when I first started speaking on virtual stages, I don't think I realized I was doing it. I was co-hosting some webinars with another influencer at the time. And this year in 2024, the beginning of 2024, the boot finally kicked me in the butt, if you will. I had thought about starting a podcast for quite a while, actually, but I didn't feel like I was ready and I didn't feel like I had the right equipment. I didn't feel like blah, blah, blah. All these excuses that I'm used to talking out of other people were hitting me. And then finally I went to my buddy's house and I was chatting there with some friends and someone just told me, it was Jeff, thank you. He said, why don't you just go home and start your podcast? And you know what? When you get called on the carpet like that, I looked at Richard and he looked back at me and we're like, shoot, okay, let's just do this. We sat down in the best studio, quote unquote, that we could find, which was like a blank wall in our room. We set up our phones. I think we had maybe some extra mics that we had traveled with. It was like a little lavalier mic. And we just started recording. Very, very first episode, almost a year ago now. And then we looked at each other, we're like, that was kind of fun. Maybe we could do that again. And then we did another one. And now I have this platform, this podcast, and I start thinking, okay, I'm going to need to start getting some guests on here. And then Richard, the data genius that he is, he starts going and doing some research in this area. And he finds out one quote by Alex Hormozi that says, if you can get past episode 20 in your podcast, you can actually be represented in the top 1% of podcasters, because most podcasters will give up after, or before rather, 20 episodes. And we have seen this happen in real life. And here's why. You record your first podcast episode and you're like, yeah, I'm an expert in my industry. I know all these things. I could speak to this for a long time. And you can go on for maybe an hour and 20 minutes. And you're like, great, that was a great episode. Let's do it again. And then your next episode, you do it monologue, you do it solo, and you're like, oh, okay, I got like 40 minutes of content now. That's still good. That's still a good episode. I can get that out there. Awesome. And then you do your next episode and you're like, I'm kind of feeling like I'm running out of things to talk about. That was only a 20-minute episode. I'm not sure if I can publish that one. And if you do it that way, your podcast is going to bite the dust. It's gonna die because you lose steam. So when Richard started doing all this research and all this data on it, we're like, okay, immediately we need to start getting guests on this show. We need to start asking people to be a guest on our podcast and interview them. Now, did we know exactly the direction that we wanted to head? Well, we thought we did. And we started heading in that direction. And as we filmed more episodes, we learned more about our audience. We learned more about the kinds of guests that we wanted to have on the show. And shout out to the earliest guests on the show who came on with us and helped us cut our teeth on our podcast. We were excited to give you the exposure, as limited as it was with the first couple of episodes. But also we were excited to see where the podcast went. When we started doing episode after episode, a few things happened. Number one, it gave us one of the best ways to network with amazing people in our industry. Big names like Keaton the Muscle and Scott Donald, which is our #1 show, by the way. And then brand new people who are just up and coming who we could give a stage to. And then also the members of our community, our students. I love showcasing our students, our members on our podcast. So that's thing #1 is it gave us huge networking opportunities. #2, when you start your podcast, it's going to give you legitimacy. You're going to have a track record of data that people can go back and look at when they're looking and researching and saying, do I want to hire this person as a mentor? Now we are 81 episodes in on our podcast with no intention of slowing down. And it has brought us so many connections and some brand new business. So I know I've been talking a lot about podcasting, but this is just one version of a digital stage, and it's the new frontier. It's the 1883. It's the Wild West of digital stages right now, which means it's time for you to get in on this. Okay, so first of all, what is a virtual stage? What's a digital stage? Well, let me give you some examples. A podcast, it's my #1 favorite virtual stage because you can control the stage. It's your stage. You can control the frequency. And if you need to get on more stages, you can just rack up as many as you need to by starting your own podcast. But there's other virtual stages as well. There's webinars, there's virtual summits, which are becoming really, really big right now. Social media live. In fact, right now I'm recording this podcast, but I'm live on half a dozen other stages. I'm live on YouTube right now. I'm live on Twitch right now. I'm live on TikTok right now. I'm live on Instagram right now, thanks to my amazing husband who can syndicate and broadcast all this podcasting all over the universe. But I'm on 5, 6 virtual stages right now. You can do virtual conferences, you can do virtual events, you can do virtual summits, you can do virtual coffee and pizza parties. It doesn't matter what it is, but virtual stages are a fantastic way to not only increase your stage count, but by also increasing your stage count, you're also increasing your visibility. And here's the #1 thing in business. I was talking to Ryan Pineda about this at one of his events. I asked him, you started in real estate. What took you from real estate to doing live events? And this is what he said. I'm going to repeat it for you because I believe in it wholeheartedly. If nobody knows what you do, you don't have a business. Because if nobody knows what you do, you don't have eyeballs, you don't have leads, and then you don't have customers. And if you don't have customers, you don't have revenue. And if you don't have revenue, you don't have a business. You just have an expensive hobby. So it does not matter what industry you are in. You could be in health and fitness. You could be in nutrition. You could be in dance. You could be in pottery. You could be in glass blowing. Doesn't matter with the industry. If customers are the thing that you want, then stages are the thing that you need to be on. And virtual stages have done amazing things and will do amazing things for your business. Let me share with you what virtual stages have done for me and my company, and can and will do for you and your company. Now, we host webinars. We love them. We love connecting with people. In fact, I have a webinar almost pretty much twice a month, if not more. But the biggest virtual stage, digital stage, in other words, that has done amazing things for our business is this. It's our podcast. It gets us visibility on YouTube. It gets us visibility on Spotify. Lots of people listen to it. And here's a really cool thing. Because we record in video for our virtual stages, in addition to audio, as this podcast is listened to by a lot of people in their car, we are in the top 25% of podcasts on Spotify because of our video content. Guys, and our podcast is not worldwide known yet. We do have listeners from all over the world, but I can safely say I'm not stopped in airports, which is not a household name. If you are willing to just record and produce a podcast, your stats can go off the charts because you are willing to do things that 75, 90% of the rest of the population is not willing to do. So don't worry if you don't have a lot of listeners out the gate. Nobody does. But just start. Here's the top 3 reasons you should start getting on not just podcasts, but all kinds of digital stages. #1 is global reach. My podcast, my virtual stage, my webinar, my whatever it is, whatever virtual summit you're putting on, it can be consumed all over the world. I was blown away when I went to the Masai Mara in Kenya, and I'm visiting families who live in houses made out of poop and sticks, like literally mud and stick houses. And they've got their phone out and they're listening to shows. I was absolutely blown away. I was like, where do you charge that thing? But literally, your podcast can be listened to worldwide. I've got listeners in Uganda. I've got listeners in Kenya. I've got listeners all over the world on every single continent. And that's a global reach, which leads me to #2. I did that for free. Guys, imagine how much you would have had to pay to get broadcast on a channel when TV was brand new. Imagine how much, I mean, we can look this up. People pay millions and millions and millions of dollars for a Super Bowl slot that's 30 seconds long. And you don't have to pay anything to jump on YouTube, get an account, and go live. You don't have to pay anything to get on Spotify and go live there. You don't have to pay anything for your Instagram account. You don't have to pay anything for your Facebook account. You don't have to pay anything for your LinkedIn account. You have network, global reach for free, for absolutely pennies. It's insane to me when people don't take advantage of this. If you want to be broadcast over the world, it's never been easier. Just turn on your camera and go live. Here's the other thing about virtual events that are absolutely incredible. Not only can you have a global reach and not only can it be free, but it's scalable. If I rent an event center, I am capped at the number of bodies that can fit in that room. Especially if the fire marshal is like, hey, you can only have a certain number of people in here, right? I'm limited on space. Now, you and I would both love to have a full event center. That's something we're going for because in-person events are so crazy powerful. But in between those in-person events, you can be filling unlimited sizes and unlimited numbers of virtual rooms. Now, here's the thing that we judge each other and we judge ourselves on a lot of the time is we go live and we're like, oh my gosh, I only had one. I only had 2 listeners. I only had 8 listeners. Only 12 people watched my video. I only got 40 views. My Instagram reel only had 127 views. Dude, can you imagine if 127 people came up and knocked on your door and just listened to you for 30 seconds? Imagine if that happened. Don't poo-poo on yourself because your views are so low. In fact, Richard and I don't really count views as part of our business success anyway, because views are incredible and I want them, but views need to lead to action. Views need to lead to a call to action. Followers are great. I love you if you're my follower, but that's not a measurement of my business success because we've generated 6 figures on less than 5,000 followers. Guys, don't be worried about how big or small it is. Just know that your content is getting seen and it's getting out there. And the more content you produce, even and especially if you feel like your views are low, the more credibility you're going to have in the marketplace. So this is my call to action for you. If you want to get on more stages, you want to be seen by more people, I'm going to give you a challenge. Now, most people are not willing to accept this challenge. And if you are, that puts you in the top single-digit percentage of people. And if you're in the top single-digit percentage of people, you're also going to experience the success that those people have. Take this on. In fact, leave it in the comments. If you're going to take this on, I want to know. I'm going to give you a challenge to go live 50 times in 14 days. That's multiple times a day. I don't care if you're doing your hair, get ready with me, get unready with me. I don't care if you're sharing your content. I don't care if it's 2 minutes long. Turn on the camera and go live 50 times in the next 14 days. And if you are feeling called like I was with that kick in the butt to start your podcast, I want you to let me know below because we specialize in helping podcasts get launched. This year, we've launched 6 podcasts, and we have a way for you to do the same thing to get your show not only out there and published, but out there and published sustainably and monetized. Thank you for listening on the Marianne Hickman Show, and we will see you in the next episode. Marianne Hickman here again. Listen, I hope super helpful for you. Maybe you learned something new. Share with me in the comments what was valuable. Or if you have this whole separate question like, hey, I wanted to know about this. I wanted to know about stage fright. I want to know how about my presentation on stage. I want to know about how to dress on stage. Anything that you want to know that's relevant to growing your business through stages, put the questions. Because guess what? I go through and answer all of those personally. That's not an agency or a VA. That's me going through and looking at your questions because you are who I am here for. So last thing is I want you to get this database. If you haven't gotten it already, now I've got thousands of downloads on this thing, so maybe you've got it, but if not, make sure you go to mariannehickman.com/database. What that's going to do is take you to a page. You're going to input all of your information. We're going to send the database to you. You're going to request access to it. I keep it locked down so I can make sure I get it to just the right people. And you're going to request access. And then once you have that, you're going to go through and apply to podcasts that have the topic that you'd be an expert speaking on. Here's the thing. I get this database updated twice a week. So there's always new stuff in there. And if you're a podcaster, there's even a list of 400 plus guests that you can have on your show on that podcast. Maybe you end up doing a podcast swap and you grow your audience that way. Regardless, I want you to get it. So mariannehickman.com/database, and we'll see you in the next Talk Tips.